Good morning. All right, we're continuing on in the discussion of being a guarantor. One Jew being the guarantor for another Jew for a loan that was borrowed from a guy. So obviously, it's a pasuk in the Torah, although the Gemara says maybe Yassim B'Drabanan, but Pashat, you're allowed to borrow and lend money to and from a guy with interest. And of course, obviously, it's prohibited to borrow and lend money to and from a Jew with interest. The question is, when a Jew is a guarantor on a loan that's given by a guy with interest, do we look at it as if the Jew who is the guarantor is, in essence, lending the money to the other Jew, or causing the money to be lent to the other Jew, and therefore it's a problem of ribos? So I want to review what we said yesterday, and then we could go forward. So it works like this. There's two types of a guarantor. One is called an arev, and one is called an arev kablan. If you have an arev kablan, which means that the guy has the ability to go to the guarantor for his debt and doesn't even have to go to the borrower, does not have to wait till the borrower defaults, then we hold that it's a serious problem. At least according to Shitas Rashi. And the reason why it's a serious problem is if the guy could go to the guarantor to get the principal paid back with interest, it's as if the guarantor is causing the loan to be lent to the Jew with interest. It's as if the guarantor is enabling the loan to be lent to the Jew with interest, and therefore, even though the Jew is technically borrowing from the guy, we consider it l'chol pachos ribos d'Rabbanan, and this is a very big problem. Now, normally today, when a person co-signs a mortgage, that's not true. Because first you have to go to the person who signed the mortgage, and then you go to the co-signer. Now, this will not preclude the problem that if the Jew, someone else pays for the person who's on the mortgage, that's a serious problem. That's a serious problem. But Lamaisa, in that case, it's not an arev kablan. That is the opinion of Rashi. Now, the Rashba on page 60 argues. He holds that even in a case of an arev kablan, there is no problem of ribos. Fundamentally, he says the Jew is borrowing money from the guy. And even if the guy could get paid back by the arev, the guarantor, without going to the borrower, still he says fundamentally that the guarantor is not paying up a loan with interest to the other Jew. Reuven is borrowing from the guy, and the guy has the right to get paid back from Shimon. However, he says there's another type of arev that is going to be a problem, and that is called an arev shlufdutz. Was meint das an arev shlufdutz? It means the guarantor is so strong that even if the lender goes to the love, goes to the borrower and says, pay me back, the borrower has the right to say, excuse me, you have nothing to do with me, go to the guarantor. That's a very strong type of guarantor. It is almost as if the guarantor is taking the money from the guy and giving it to the other Jew. It's like he's lending money to the borrower. The borrower borrowed the money from the guy, technically speaking. But after he takes that money, the guy and him have no relationship from a business perspective. It's solely between him and the guarantor. In fact, if the guy comes to him, he could say, go to the guarantor. Now, therefore, the guarantor is going to go and get paid back from the borrower. And now, if he takes the interest from the borrower, so it's like he effectuated a loan of $1,000 and he took back 10% interest. That is Shitas Harashba. So we have here a machlokas how strong the guarantor has to be in order for it to be a big problem. According to Rashi, it's a big problem even if the guy could just go if he wants to the guarantor first, what we call today an Arev Kablan. Rashi says that even in that case, it's like the only reason the guy is lending the money to the Jew, the borrower with interest, is because of the guarantor. It's like he's effectuating a loan. It's like he's lending with ribbis. The Rashba says no. He's not lending with ribbis. Only if it's the stronger type of guarantor is he lending with ribbis. Let's look how the Mechaber paskins this on page 63. Yisrael shalava mos migoy beribis simin kofayin. A Jew borrows money from a guy with interest. Also, Yisrael achar lios la'orev. Another Jew cannot be a guarantor. Shekevan shebidineim tovei ha'arev tchila. Since, according to non-Jewish law, they could go to the guarantor first. That's obviously not the case today in non-Jewish law. Nim tzaharev, the guarantor will go to the Jew and say, I want you to pay me the interest that I gave to the guy. Therefore, if the guy says, I will not go to the guarantor first, I'll go to him. If the Jew defaults on the loan, it's mutter. Says the Ramah, the Ramah says already by his time, even Goyim went directly to the borrower first, didn't go to the guarantor. Now then the second opinion of the Mechaber is the more lenient opinion like the Rashba. The Yesh Omrim, some people say, She'eno Asar Ela Ba'arev Shluf Dutz. It's only prohibited with a strong type of Arev called a Shluf Dutz. That means that the guarantor is cleaning out the borrower from ever having a relationship with the lender. Only in that case is it a problem. That's the second opinion of the Mechaber, and you should know, generally we paskin like the second opinion of the Mechaber. With Shachora, with a regular guarantor, you could do it. The Shach brings down the Beis Yosef, obviously the same person as the Mechaber, that lechatchila, we should say that if you could go to the guarantor first, like Shitas Rashi, it's still a problem. Okay. Let's quickly go to page 69 and a continuation of this halacha in a slightly different format. Says the Mechaber, Shnayim shalavu ke'echad o shalakhu mekach echad shneim arevim zelazeh afa pishlo piresh vim ein nechasim le'echad mehem gova mechavero hakol avam yeshlo nechasim lo yitzbarev tchila ki yeshlo denarev b'chol davar. So therefore, the halacha is when two people borrow from one person. We're not really talking about interest over here. Two people borrow from one person. The halacha is that each one has to pay 50% of the loan. However, if one of them,
person on the same loan, you're saying?
Yeah, the same loan. However, if one of them defaults, then the other one is on the hook for the entire loan. If one of them pays back the entire loan, so he's allowed to get 50% back from the other partner. Davar Pashat L'chora. On the page 71, he brings an interesting situation here. Let's say two people borrow from one person, from a guy, with money, with interest. And everybody agrees that they are an Arev Kablan for the other partner, which means the guy has the right to go to each partner individually and collect the entire money with interest, and then they'll work it out among themselves. That's the guy's right. So l'chora, that should be a problem. Because according to the first shita of the Mechaber, which l'chatchila we go like, which is shitas Rashi, If I am a guarantor for your loan that you borrowed from the guy, and it's an arev kablon, which means the guy could go to me first, then it's like I effectuated the loan with interest to you, in which case,
it's different here.
Why is it different?
They're both on the same loan. So meaning the other time you were becoming a guarantor for somebody else, here you're both on the loan itself, so you should both be on the hook. It's not really interest versus the other one you're saying to a Jew because I defaulted. Here I would say not. You both on the same exact loan.
So that's not the heter that the Sha'adea says on page 71. That's a nice heter. That's not. Yeah, that's not the heter. The heter is that in this case, it's mutter when you write the total sum of money in the loan and not the principal and interest as separate line items. And that's how he says you could do it in this case to avoid it. He doesn't hold of your heter. He holds that you really are an Arev Kablan, and according to the first opinion of the Mechaber, it's going to be a problem. But he says the loophole around it is for the guy to write to the partners the entire lump that he's going to collect, lump sum that he's going to collect, and therefore in this case, which is only Ribbis D'Rabbanan, we would say that it's not a problem.
It doesn't have to be a specific one. Why can't you, instead of writing interest, do it as a one lump sum?
Because in that case, you're actually lending less, so it's still going to be Ribbis when you get it back.
Yeah, but
here, right? But here it's a little bit different because here the guy is giving us $1,000. Mm-hmm. We're giving $1,100 back. The shtar just says that we're obligated $1,100 back. So the whole issue is one party being obligated to the other party, not being obligated to the original borrower, the original lender. Whereas in a case where I'm obligated to the original lender,
you're still paying that ribbis, even if you put it as a line item that's not 1,000.
Right. I'm still paying ribbis. But in this case, the guy, we're not talking about ribbis to the guy. Ribbis to the guy is mutter. We're talking about each person's obligation to each other. Right. And in that case, we could just say they both went into 50% of the obligation. And since it's Ribbis D'Rabbanan, we matter it if it doesn't say a separate line item. Okay, that's the Sha'adea's heter in this type of situation when partners borrow from a guy. The chara, we need some sort of heter because if I'm not mistaken, when two partners borrow on a loan from a guy and it says those fancy words jointly and severally, it gives the guy the option to take payment from each partner directly without going to the other partner, and that's the shaila of an Arev Kablan. Okay, because then he owes the other partner that amount of money. Okay, we're going to stop here. I wish everybody a truly wonderful day. We are going to take a break on Friday. We'll reconvene after Pesach.